Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So we are reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is the Madhya Leela, and there are two particular texts, 211 and 212. And the texts are as follows. Sitaya radito vanis chayam sitam aji janat tam jahara dasa griva Sita vani puram gata pariksha samaye vanim chaya sita viveshasa vani sitam samaniya tat purastat ani inayat. And the translation by Srila Prabhupada. When he was petitioned by Mother Sita, the fire god Agni brought forth an illusory form of Sita, and Ravana, who had 10 heads, kidnapped the false Sita. The original Sita then went to the abode of the fire god. When Lord Ramachandra tested the body of Sita, it was the false illusory Sita that entered the fire. At that time, the fire god brought the original Sita from his abode and delivered her to Lord Ramachandra. Unquote. So these two verses are from the Kurma Purana, which is given in a one-line purport by Srila Prabhupada. So I'm going to discuss this in various parts. First, we're going to briefly introduce Maharaj Janak or King Janak, who is the father of Sita, but not an ordinary father of Mother Sita. In a purport, Srila Prabhupada says that kings like Janak were all self-realized souls. And Janak, who happens to be the father of Sita, is a great devotee of the Lord. And Prabhupada said that he is always transcendently situated. He was the king of Mithila, which is a sort of a subdivision of the Bihar province that we have currently in India today. Now, Srila Prabhupada used to quote that famous line from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Mahajano ye na gata sapanta. Mahajan means basically an authority. And an authority for what? Authority for the Vedic Shastras. So there are 12 Mahajans. Swayambhu, who is Lord Brahma, Narada, and then there's Shambhu, who is Lord Shiva. Then there's the Kumaras, then there's Kapila, then there's Manu, and Prahlad, then Janak now is mentioned, and Bhishma, Bali Maharaj, and Vyasaki, who is Sukadev Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, and Yamaraj. So these Mahajans or authorities should be followed if we want to approach Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because they have fully realized the purpose of spiritual life. And Srila Prabhupada indicates also that these Mahajans, they follow all the principles that Krishna has given in the Bhagavad Gita. Now, such a personality of being the father of Sita is not an ordinary person. At the same time, we do not hear of Sita's mother in relation to the queen of Janak. Although the queen, Janak Maharaj's wife, is accepted as a mother, but she's not so prominently mentioned like that in different places. So the special appearance of Sita, which is actually bringing out a chastity and purity right from even prior to her birth. So in the 9th canto, in the 13th chapter in text number 18, there's a beautiful verse that describes this. And the verse is Tata Sirat Vajo Yagne. So another name, excuse me, for another name for Maharaj or King Janak is Sirat Vajo. And what was Maharaj Janak doing? Yagyatam Kashato Mahim. That means Yagyatam indicates that Maharaj Janak was doing a particular type of sacrifice, which is called Karshato. Karshato indicates he's plowing the field on the earth, which is called Mahim. Therefore, Yagatam Karshato Mahim, plowing the field, is a type of sacrifice. And then what happened was Sita, Sirag, Rato, Jata. Jata means to be born. And who was born? Sita, Sirag, Rato. Sita, Sirag, Rato means from the front portion of the plow, to plow. See? And therefore, Tasmat, Sirad Vajaha Smita. So Srila Prabhupada translates here that Janak, who is also known as Sirad Vaja, is the son of another king called Hirashvaroma. So when Janak was plowing the field, from the front of his plow, Sira means plow, appeared a daughter named Sita Devi, who later became the wife of Lord Ramachandra. Now, just to explain this a little bit further, Janak Maharaj, when he was performing the sacrifice in order to get sort of a worthy successor in his line, so as the sacrificial ground was being prepared with a golden plowshare, a wonderful child appeared from out of the earth itself, Mahim, earth itself. And this child, apparently being female, became known by the name of Sita. And her beauty is actually matchless. Nobody can match Sita's beauty. Now, in Sanskrit, Bhumi is called earth. And also in Sanskrit, Sita, that means, the long I and long, Sita, like that. That is called a furrow. So we know that when Janak Maharaj was taking the golden plowshare and furrowing the sacrificial ground, in other words, making this furrow, Sita, she appeared from the furrow plowed by her father, Janak Maharaj. And as a result, Sita was given the name Janaka Nandini, which is the daughter of King Janak, or sometimes she is called Janaki, which is the daughter of the royal saintly king, Janak Maharaj. So in other words, the furrow is a Sanskrit word for which is called Sita, and hence she got that beautiful name. Now, those two verses I just read from the beginning, at the beginning of the class today from the Kurma Puran, I have actually also looked up the translations in the Kurma Puran itself from these verses and other related verses, indicating the chastity and purity of Mother Sita. Now, prior to those verses, which I just read from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is actually in the Kurma Puran, there are some other verses. And those particular verses indicate that when a woman engages exclusively in the service of a devotee husband, she is considered chaste. Of course, here we are trying to qualify something that a husband or a father should actually fit the description and designation and duties of a husband or father. Otherwise, the person cannot be called properly a husband or a father. So therefore, I'm using the words devotee husband. And when such a woman engages in the service of her husband and the father of her children, who's considered chaste, she automatically is freed from all reactions. And because such a chaste woman is automatically freed from all reactions, she can surmount any kind of challenges or difficulties and not be disturbed. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada used to also say that due to Mother Sita's chastity, this great demon Ravana was killed. Because of her chastity, he was killed. Now, in these verses I've read, I'm paraphrasing a little bit here. So when Ravana came to kidnap Mother Sita, and when she saw him and realized who he actually is, she immediately took shelter of the fire god Agni. So Agni, through his potency of being fire, but not as the demigod Agni, covered the body of Mother Sita. And in this way, Sita was protected from the hands of Ravana. Now, when that happened to Mother Sita, was sort of feeling that, she is being like sort of, inverted commas, molested by Ravana, she closed the eyes. She closed the eyes. So when she closed the eyes, she didn't know it was not Ravana. It was actually Agni that expanded his fiery form in a subtle way, which was not seen by Ravana at all. And in that way, Agni replaced Sita with what is called Maya Sita, or Chaya. Chaya means a shadow or reflection Sita. Maya Sita or Chaya Sita. And this is made of the external energy. So now Agni, after he did that, he could not touch Sita, although the fire covered the body of Sita. Because nobody can touch Sita except Lord Ramachandra. So he realized he could not. So Agni was in a sort of dilemma that, here I am, I have to protect Sita and take her away now. At the same time, there's an illusory Sita that is being taken away by Ravana and not the real Sita. So he became anxious, or he was in anxiety. So when Agni became anxious and was in anxiety like that, he always remembers that person that he's closest to. And that person, Agni, that is closest to and mostly attached to is his consort. And his consort's name is Swaha. Like when you do fire yagya, we throw the grains into the fire, but but actually Swaha is receiving the grains and handing it over to the fire, which is Agni. So the consort of Agni is called Swaha. So Swaha is you could say, a demigoddess, and all demigoddesses are expansions of the goddess of fortune, which is Sita Devi. So Swaha is an expansion of Sita Devi. So when Agni could not touch Sita to take her away, then Swaha appeared to Agni. And Swaha appeared to Agni sort of like on his lap, so to speak, if you want to see it like that. And then Sita was placed into Swaha, and then Agni took Sita away, with Swaha sort of in between his own consort. But Swaha also can touch Sita Devi because she's an expansion of the goddess of fortune, who is Mother Sita. Now, upon hearing these two verses from the Kurma Puran of how Ravana kidnapped the false form of Sita, because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was hearing these verses when he was touring South India, which is given in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became very, very satisfied and pleased. So therefore, it is understood that it was an illusory or Maya or Chaya Sita that Ravana kidnapped and took to Lanka. And therefore, the conclusion is that the fire god Agni, through the agency of his consort Swaha, took away the real Sita. And it is also given in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that he brought this real Sita to the place of Parvati, or another name for Parvati is Goddess Durga. And Parvati, or Goddess Durga, is also an expansion of the goddess of fortune, Sita. So in this way, when the illusory form of Maya Sita was delivered to Ravana, Ravana was cheated. He did not win. And as we know that after Ravana was killed by Lord Ramachandra, Sita was brought before the fire and tested. So when the illusory Sita was brought before the fire by Lord Ramachandra, Agni Dev himself, the fire god, made the illusory form disappear and delivered the real Sita to Lord Ramachandra. And Agni also sort of explained of how he took Sita and delivered an illusory Sita or Maya Sita to Ravana. And therefore he begged, Agni Dev begged Lord Ramachandra to please accept the real Sita, who is the most chaste of all women and is always free from any sort of blemish. So, so that proves from these evidences from the Chaitanya Charitamrita and from the Kurma Puran that Sita is always chaste and always pure, and she always belongs to Lord Ramachandra. Now, His Holiness Giriraj Swami recalls some exchange with Srila Prabhupada, and he mentions that, and he mentions that once a devotee told him, one of his godbrothers, told him that Srila Prabhupada had said that all of our service here in the material world is meant to bring Radha and Krishna or Sita and Ram together in the spiritual world. So His Holiness Giriraj Swami was not very sure about that statement. So he directly approached Srila Prabhupada and asked him whether he said something like that. Excuse me. So Srila Prabhupada replied to His Holiness Giriraj Swami that materialists are like Ravana and they have kidnapped Sita or Lakshmi, but not the actual Sita. See? And then Srila Prabhupada said that but we as devotees must act as Hanuman and get Lakshmi back or Sita back from Ravana and return her to Rama or Narayan by engaging the money in the service of the Lord. Because Sita is the goddess of fortune and she is also considered Mahalakshmi. And then Srila Prabhupada said that it's a sort of like a lesson to learn that when the devotee takes money in the name of Krishna's service, but then he uses it for his own sense gratification, that's not really a devotee. But then that particular, well, so-called devotee, he becomes a debtor to the people who gave him the money or gave her the money. In other words, he owes them the money. He has to come in future lives to give back. So therefore, when we collect money in the name of Krishna's service, we should use it for Krishna's service and not for our sense gratification. And then Srila Prabhupada gave the example of a peon. A peon carries a money order or money from the donor to the Lord. And Prabhupada said Hanuman is just like that type of peon. That Hanuman went to free Sita from Ravana, but not to keep Sita for himself, but Hanuman delivered Sita to Lord Ramachandra. So therefore Prabhupada said we should be like Hanuman, that we should free Sita from the hands of whomever and whoever has, like the goddess of fortune or Lakshmi, and deliver the goddess of fortune or Lakshmi or Sita to Lord Ramachandra. In other words, we are not meant to touch Sita. We can deliver in such a way that we don't need to touch. See? And the example is given of the smelling power. Like for example, if there's a fragrant flower, we can smell the fragrant flower, but we are not touching the fragrant flower. We can feel the potency of the fragrant flower without touching it by the function or the sense of the smell. So in a similar way, Hanuman did not touch Sita, but he begged her, please come. Now I'm taking you to Lord Ramachandra. So therefore, in the same way, if we do not hand over especially money collected in the name of Krishna's service, Lakshmi, and we may have to come back in another life and pay our debt to the people from whom we took the money. So these are very subtle laws of karma or the material nature. And therefore Srila Prabhupada was highly concerned. Giriraj Swami said that we should not become victims of our desires for our own sense gratification by misusing the money that is collected in the name of Krishna's service. So therefore, when Srila Prabhupada explained this all very clearly, it's a lesson that one has to be very conscientious and use the Lord's property, which is actually Lakshmi or Sita, only for the Lord's service. Only for the Lord's service. And therefore, will become in the consciousness of Hanuman, who was a great devotee, and even get the mercy of Hanuman and the mercy of Lord Ramachandra. Very important lesson to learn. Now, in relation to the same Maya Sita, Srila Prabhupada says in a very beautiful purport in the 9th canto, which is the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra in the 10th chapter, text 11 purport, that it was actually impossible for Ravana to take away Sita, because the form of Sita taken by Ravana was the illusory Maya Sita. So as we have discussed a few minutes ago, that when Sita was tested in the fire, the Maya Sita was burnt and the real Sita came out. So Srila Prabhupada says there, what can we learn from this anyway? What can we learn? Is that the understanding is that a woman, no matter how powerful she may be, even in the material world, like Mother Sita, who appeared here in past times as Maya Sita. A woman, no matter how powerful, must be given protection. And then Srila Prabhupada says that as soon as the woman is unprotected, and the word, and the beautiful word in the verse is used, asammaksham. Asammaksham means unprotected or even helpless. As soon as a woman is unprotected and helpless, she will practically immediately be exploited by Rakshasas like Ravana. Okay? So therefore, the words Vaideha Raja Duhittari, because Janak was also the king of Mithila, was known as Vaideha Raj. It indicates that before Sita was married to Lord Ramachandra, she was protected by Janak Maharaj. And when she was married, she was protected by Lord Ramachandra, her husband. And then the pastime goes with Love and Kush. They protected the mother later on. See? So therefore, the conclusion is that Srila Prabhupada said that the woman should always be protected. And according to the Vedic injunction, that although a woman, you could say, may have tendency to be independent, but still she needs a dependency on a, you could say, a saintly father, a saintly husband, and saintly husbands, and saintly husband and saintly sons as the children grow up. So in that way, she always feels happy, even in Krishna consciousness. Now, we will sort of say some concluding words and then take some comments or questions thereafter now. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who discovered these verses of the Kurma Puran, in his travels in South India, prior to that, he was in a place called Madurai. And I've actually been to that small city. I mean, it's one of the smaller cities, but pretty large still in South India. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was invited to the home of a Brahmana. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could detect that this Brahmana was a great devotee and actually an authority on Lord Ramachandra. And why is that? Because when Mahaprabhu entered his home, because he was invited for prasadam, he requested his host, the Brahmana, I'm here. And the host said, I have not cooked yet. So Mahaprabhu asked him why. He said that, well, when Lakshman brings all the vegetables and the fruits and the roots from the forest, then actually Sita will do the necessary cooking. He's telling this to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So immediately Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could understand that he was living in Rama Lila. He was such a great devotee of Lord Ramachandra, Sita Ram. So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to take bath in the river, and he came after lunch, at the time around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And by this time, the Brahmana was already prepared the prasad and so forth, and invited Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to honor prasad. So after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu honored, he requested the Brahmana to also now honor prasadam. But he saw that the Brahmana was feeling very unhappy and sorrowful and felt that he wanted to fast. So the Brahmana said, I want to fast. So Mahaprabhu inquired, why? Then the Brahmana said, my dear Lord, Mother Sita is the mother of the universe. And she is the supreme goddess of fortune. But I cannot understand how she has been touched by this demon Ravana. And this is troubling me. And I have no even appetite to eat, so I just fast. So we can understand here that the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was very glad and happy to see this so deep, love for Sita Ram this Brahmana had. So immediately Mahaprabhu pacified him. Now, who is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Before we could, before we tell you these verses that he spoke to this Brahmana, we understand that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is none different from Lord Ramachandra and Lord Krishna. And what is the proof of this? We all are aware of a form called Sadbhuja form. Sadbhuja means six-armed form. The Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has 6 arms. And he manifested this form to Ramananda Rai and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So this is called the Sadbhuja Murti. Now this Sadbhuja form is actually worshipped by devotees of Lord Chaitanya. And this particular form of Murti is situated in the area of the Jagannath temple in Jagannath Puri. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited this form, he revealed that he was none other than the Supreme Lord, who is also Lord Ramachandra in 2 arms in the Sadbhuja form. He has an arrow and he has a bow. And in the other 2 arms, and he's playing a flute. And then the other 2 arms, he has a kamandalu. And as a sannyasi, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Mahaprabhu revealed that he is non-different from Lord Ramachandra and Lord Krishna. So having that sort of premise in our conscious understanding, surely Mahaprabhu knows everything about Mother Sita. And therefore he beautifully speaks to this Brahmana, these 2 beautiful verses, which convince the Brahmana to give up his fast and take prasad. And Mahaprabhu says, Ishvara prayasi sita chit anandamurti prakrita indriyera tanre deki te nahi shakti. And Srila Prabhupada's translation is that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, Sita Devi, the dearmost wife of the Supreme Lord Ramachandra, certainly has a spiritual form full of bliss. No one can see her with material eyes, like Ravana, and no materialist has such power. And then Mahaprabhu gives another verse, Aprakrita vastu nahi prakrita gochara Veda puranete hehi kahe nirantara. That spiritual substance, like the form of Mother Sita, is never within the jurisdiction of the material conception. This is always the verdict of the Vedas and the Puranas. So we can see that Sita Devi is completely chaste and pure from all angles of vision and all discussions from the Shastras. All right. I believe we can leave some time now for comments and questions if anyone has. So we ask Krishna Prabhu may facilitate this.
I always have a question that has always troubled me since I was a child. I hope you will clarify my ignorance. In fact, Lord Ram was the supreme personality of Godhead, and he knew very well that Mother Sita was chaste and pure. But still, when he heard about what the washerman said about Mother Sita, Lord Ram has asked Lakshman to go and drop her at the. He gave up on her. So I wanted to have clarification why he did so, and especially at that time, we knew that Mother Sita was pregnant.
Good question. Thank you. Now, when Lord Ramachandra or any incarnation of the Lord appears in this world, they also come to Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya Glanit Bhavati Bharata. So they come to re-establish Dharma and do away with our Dharma. At the same time, they wind up their pastimes. They do wind up their pastimes in that way. So obviously, if Lord Ramachandra winds up his pastime and leaves first, that will become very, very traumatic for Mother Sita. So because of that, Mother Sita decided, at least not Mother Sita, Lord Ramachandra decided internally that in order for me to wind up my pastimes, I'll have to send Mother Sita back to the Vaikuntha Ayodhya. So somehow there has to be some reason or like an excuse for that to happen to Mother Sita. See? So it was very dramatic actually what happened. And eventually we know that Mother Sita went back to her mother, which is Bhumi, furrow, plowing, Sita. See? So therefore, when Mother Sita went back to Ayodhya, in Vaikuntha Ayodhya, and not from this Ayodhya, from this realm in this world, or in this universe, then Ramachandra, grievingly also winded up his pastimes and went back to Vaikuntha Ayodhya. So that's the main reason why that happened. Because the Lord appears and the Lord disappears. And the Lord appears with his associates and his entourage, and the Lord also wants his associates and entourage to disappear and go back to Vaikuntha. Ambika, is that all right?
Yes, Maharaj.
Yes. So although it's actually it's a very traumatic situation, it definitely, and very dramatic. And we are learning lessons from that. And the lesson is that, the wife or the mother of the home should not leave home, on her own and go somewhere else. That's the lesson to be learned. I mean, in like the strict culture of the Dharma of Ramachandra's rules and regulations that governed Ayodhya. That's the lesson to be learned. Sita can never be destroyed. Sita is always transcendental, but the Lord uses his own associates for us to learn lessons. Ambika, is that okay?
Maharaj.
Now you can imagine what would have happened to Sita if Ram left or winded up his pastimes first. You can imagine what would have happened to her, right? That would have been more dramatic and traumatic for Sita. So he sends his consort first and then he follows to Ayodhya in Vaikuntha. All right? Right, now ask your question. Go ahead.
Yes, Maharaj, I wanted to know if why scriptures say that woman must be under the protection of someone. We see that Draupadi had 5 most pious, powerful husbands. All were exalted personalities, yet only Krishna could help her.
Well, that's a nice question. That's a nice question. Nice. So you really want to know the answer, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, on the absolute platform, there's no such thing as man or woman. See? On the transitional platform between material and spiritual, a woman has to be protected. So there are 3 features here. There is animal life, there is human life, and there is spiritual life. So animal life means women, children, cows, elderly people, people who are sick, and also people who are invalid or crippled and so forth, some defect physically there. They are always exploited and abused. So because they are exploited and abused, by animalistic human beings, those who are human beings have to protect them. And in the human form of life, from animal life to human life, these personalities like children, women, brahmanas, elders, cows, and the invalid or crippled people have to be protected. So it's not just only women. But on the spiritual platform, there is no discrimination or distinction between bodies. It's only one distinction as spirit soul to the supreme spirit soul. So if somebody, which is actually not, you could say, a regular devotees, but if somebody is in a special category of a particular type of devotee, and if they don't want to be like entering into from like material transitioning to human life and from human life to spiritual life, then they can directly take protection and care under the, you could say, under the protection and care within the process of Krishna consciousness directly from Krishna. But directly from Krishna also feels that one should be indirectly protected directly by Krishna. In other words, we have the disciplic succession and so forth. So I'll give you one particular example. Why Prabhupada used to say like this, and then eventually he said something else. One of Prabhupada's very early disciples joined him in New York. And she was going to high school. In other words, when she came to see Srila Prabhupada, she was like in a school dress. And she was living in a boarding school. So when she met Srila Prabhupada and she was in a school dress, Srila Prabhupada asked her this question: where is your father and mother? Then Srila Prabhupada saw on the frowned expression on her face that she could not answer the question because she did not know who or where is her father and mother. Then Srila Prabhupada immediately understood she could not answer the question, and therefore he immediately sort of made her feel comfortable. Then Srila Prabhupada said, don't worry, I will be your father and mother. So in other words, being directly protected by Krishna and being directly, you could say, taken care of by Krishna is still through the disciplic succession. And being protected by Krishna is also still through the favorable association of devotees. That's how, one is protected. Now, to extend that sort of understanding a little further is that there is a saying that it takes a whole village to bring up a child. In other words, even the mother and father cannot protect the daughter all the time. See? So therefore, it requires like a society or a community of devotees who are Krishna conscious to receive Krishna's protection from the Krishna consciousness of the devotees in a society of devotees or in a community of devotees. Okay? So loosely speaking, one cannot say that one will get the direct protection of Krishna, but the direct protection of Krishna comes directly, indirectly through the favorable association of devotees and through the disciplic succession, one's Diksha Guru and one's Shiksha Guru. Tell her to come onto the screen, Hema Kishori, and tell me whether you are satisfied with the answer. You have some other question based on this answer.
Yes,
Hema
Maharaj.
Kishori, tell
Yes,
me.
Maharaj. Yes, to some extent, I am trying to contemplate on what you are saying, but yes, I sort of get my answer for this question.
Okay, now what about to some extent? You said, what's the other extent that's missing? Come on.
Because when you see in that assembly, there were like most of them were devotees.
Which
Like,
assembly? Which assembly?
when Draupadi was being insulted in the Kuru's
Nobody
assembly.
was never insulted.
Okay.
Draupadi, it's like you're saying Draupadi was being disrobed, right?
Yes.
Yes. But did she actually get disrobed?
No.
Okay, now you know what's the lesson to learn from that? I'll tell you. So what you are doing is, it's good what you're doing. We are all learning from this. We're all learning wonderfully from this. You should understand that that you have to focus on Draupadi. But what you're focused on is the 5 Pandavas who could not protect Draupadi. That's what you're focused on right now. So now I'm focusing on Draupadi herself. Now Draupadi had one hand holding her sari. And on the other hand, she lifted it up and she was crying out for Krishna. Hey Govinda, hey Govinda. But Krishna never came. Krishna never came. See? But when she realized that she was about to be completely disrobed, but still sari on her form, like that, she let go of the other hand and she put both hands up. And when she put both hands up and said, Hey Govinda, then Krishna incarnated as a sari. So the lesson to be learned is that we should become fully dependent on Krishna, not partially dependent on Krishna. And that's also a lesson for the 5 Pandavas, that you also cannot protect your own wife, but my protection is always necessary. See? So now if you want to apply this in your own life, you cannot imitate Draupadi. Because there are certain things that we do, whether you have a male body or a female body as devotees, we know internally that, are we fully dependent on Krishna? Are we fully dependent on Krishna? See? For example, one may feel that my nephew is dependent on me. One may feel my father and mother are dependent on me. One may feel without me working, this temple won't get any donation. Without my services in the temple, there'll be no one else to do the service. So therefore, when we take an example from scripture, we cannot imitate, but we should simply follow the principles behind it and apply it practically in our lives. Is that all right?
Yes, Maharaj.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
There's a beautiful verse, Guru nasasyat, Pita nasasyat, Janani nasasyat, that the spiritual master, the king, or the father, they should not take responsibilities for the charges under their care if they cannot deliver them from the cycle of birth, old age, disease, and death. That's also there. So therefore, that's a real protector. A real protector in the form of a devotee father, devotee husband, devotee mother, or devotee wife, who's having children also as a mother, should actually be prepared to do anything to bring everyone under the protection of Krishna, so they do not take birth again, and no old age, and no disease, and no death again. Is that all right?
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So there is one more question from Facebook Live from Lakan Prabhu. He
Yes.
say, Hare Krishna Maharaj, Pamho. As
Hare
Grihastha,
Krishna.
what practical lessons can we learn from the Ramayana and apply it in our daily life? Thank you.
Well, there are so many lessons to be learned from Ramayana, to be applied in your daily life, not really as a grihastha, I would say, but more as a devotee, which is a little beyond being a grihastha. See? And one thing that can facilitate our advancement or purification or realization in Krishna consciousness is that Lord Ramachandra took what is called an Ekapatni Vrat. Ekapatni means one wife is sufficient, and therefore is sometimes called Lila Purushottama. In that Lila, this Purushottama, Lord Ramachandra, took the vow of Ekapatni Vrat. That means the sufficiency of having a marriage only once in this life and one wife. So that helps to actually become more Krishna conscious. So that's one major lesson to be learned from the Ramayana. I hope that pleases Lakan for now, although there's many other lessons to learn from the Ramayana. Now, just to add to that a little bit more, if you would permit me, just to add to that a little bit more, even having one wife, or being a mother, or being a father, or even being a daughter or a son, there are challenges. There are difficulties and there are problems. See? But despite the challenges and difficulties and problems in that particular ashram, the ashram is teaching us to become more and more conscious of Krishna, and more purification, and more realization. So why should one get married again or whatever, take another wife or something? Whereas the realization can already be there, just having this Ekapratnivat, one vow.
So we move back to Facebook, Maharaj. There's a question. Why is it that we should not sing any song on Sita Ram in the temple mostly?
Is there like a rule that we should not sing?
Can I take it again, Maharaj?
I'm not sure of the question, but is there a rule that we cannot sing the glories of Sita Ram, like kirtan or bhajan? Is there a rule? I'm not sure.
We got another message, Maharaj. It say, why is that there is no Vaishnav song on Sri Ram?
I don't understand the question. We are Vaishnavas, but that means we are devotees of Vishnu. So Vishnu is also a form of Lord Ramachandra, and Ramachandra is also a form of Vishnu. So when we glorify Krishna, we are glorifying all his expansions and incarnations, Krishna's to Bhagavan Swayam. So and I'm also going to discuss the three names, Hare Krishna and Rama, on Wednesday evening. I mean, I could do that right now if you want, but we could discuss it also on Wednesday evening. Prabhupada says that the name Rama in the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra indicates three personalities. One is Lord Ramachandra. The other is Parusaram, who is an incarnation of Krishna. He is also known as Rama. And Balaram is also known as Rama. So when we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, then we can indicate either Balaram, Parusaram, or Lord Ramachandra. So one time there was a discussion amongst devotees, and they took this discussion to Srila Prabhupada, that is the Rama in the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra meaning Balaram, Parusaram, or Ramachandra when we chant. Then Srila Prabhupada graciously said, as you like, as you like. So therefore, the best kirtan or the best bhajan to chant is the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And when you chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, the Maha Mantra includes everything. Includes all the songs of the previous acharyas. It includes Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram Patita Pavana Sita Ram. It includes everything about Lord Ramachandra and all the incarnations and expansions. So why not just chant the holy name? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. However, on special occasions, we can chant bhajans and kirtans that are bona fide and authorized by our previous acharyas and by Srila Prabhupada in the temple room in front of the deities of Sita, Sita, Ram, Lakshman, Hanuman. So there are devotees who chant bona fide, authorized bhajans in glorification of Sita, Ram, Lakshman, Hanuman. We can also do that on special occasions. All right. I hope that satisfies that nice devotee who asked the question. Anyone else?
Yes, Maharaj. There is Mataji. Yes, Maharaj. There is Mataji Parvati Karuna from Zoom chat. So we'll be requesting Mataji to please come on the screen and unmute yourself, Mataji, please.
And also we have to give Harini Mataji another chance to come on. Audio was not working. So let's give this other devotee you mentioned now first. Come on.
Hi, Krishna Maharaj. I just want to ask a question about the lecture you just mentioned now. My question was how to work and return Lakshmi to Lord Rama.
Prabhupada says that it's very important that when we receive money or when we receive any donation, whether it's in cash or in kind, that we are asking people to give us for the propagation and the spreading of Krishna consciousness. That should be used exclusively for the purpose that we received it. That means in the service of Shri Radha Golokananda, in the service of Sri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra, in the service of Shri Gaur Nitai, Panchatattva, or Krishna Balaram. So we should use it exclusively in their service. Now, how we use that Lakshmi in their service is in various ways, like constructing a temple for them, like buying boga for them, see? Like paying the electricity bill, paying the water bill for the temple, see? So that money is used for their pleasure and for the maintenance of their home or the temple or palace. Parvati Karuna, is that all right? And also just to add, like you get the devotees who are living with the Lord in his home, in the temple.
Yeah.
So they need to also be maintained to serve the Lord with that Lakshmi that's being used. Because they live in a simple way. They're meant to be living in a simple way in the temple, and they can be taken care of for the basic food, prasadam, and some clothing and some shelter. That's also because they are like associates of the Lord. They live with the Lord.
Okay, Maharaj.
Is that okay?
Thank you. Yes, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Hare Krishna.